Welcome one, welcome all. It is the Martinsville Speedway this weekend here on April 7th. I am joined by the usual Statsational Stats. How are you doing today? I know last week you were out in Atlantic City, and this week you're back at home, man. How is everything going?
It's going well, man. It was fun week last week. I'm sorry I missed it with you guys. Hopefully Big T did a good job as he usually does. I don't know how you guys fared in the contest. I was just telling you before, I had a little bit of a rough one with my bet last week. I had two bets for the outright win. One was Martin Truex and the other Joey Logano. Someone's going to kill. By the way, they do say Logano, like the guy on the NASCAR radio says Logano when they're running. That's why it's in my head. But yeah, that was a painful way to finish the race. I mean, 2 laps to go. Nobody's catching Truex there. And if possibly anyone was going to get him, it was going to be Logano. So that was a tough one to swallow. So hopefully we have a little bit better luck this week in both the bets and DFS. Let's crush it this week.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun time. Last week, I know, was actually really successful for a lot of members there. I know that Sean Smith, a member here at Run Pure Sports, was winning 100K until that caution was drawn out there by Bubba Wallace getting into the rear of Kyle Larson. And this week, they are starting 1-2 as well. So it's going to be a little bit of fun that we have here. I don't think Larson has any bad blood or any bad intentions or anything like that. But it's still going to be a fun time. I do know when we were looking at all the screenshots we had last week, we also had a bunch of screenshots the entire week for all sports, and more specifically, Big T, absolutely crushing it. Another 60K in MLB, another 10K in college basketball. Really just crushing it in all sports there, and that's what we do here at Run Pure Sports. If you guys are interested, code RPS15. 15% off your first payment here at Run Pure Sports. We have a bunch of single sport only packages available now and are coming into the future as well. So if you guys aren't really that interested in maybe, I'm not a huge NBA guy or anything like that, we have a baseball only package now. We also have a NASCAR only package, or racing only, I should say, because F1 was full of winners today too. So a lot of screenshots in the F1 chat here as well. Real quick stats. When we break down Martinsville, it is a very short track. It's a half mile. It's basically all, flat. And all that matters about the braking, really, and all about how you get in and out of gears. And obviously, Brandon Jones does not know how to get in and out of gear and screwed up our Xfinity lineups yesterday. But go ahead and give your breakdown of Martinsville, what we should expect in this race, and what the best style of strategy should be here today.
Yeah, so we got 400 laps, and this is a race that in the past has been dominated by generally 2 drivers. So we're looking at 2 Doms since we've gone to next gen. There's been 4 races, and we've had 8 drivers get at least 100, be on the lead lap, 100 lead laps. So that translates to you want a minimum of 2 dominators for your lineups here. And the thing about this track, again, it's a half mile. It's really difficult once you get out in front, even if you have a lesser car than maybe the guy behind you. It's real tough for that guy behind you to pass. So getting out front is going to be key. And really the way the teams are going to pass is just going to be pit strategy, being better in the pits, and then pit strategy as well. That's going to be key here today. When I look back at some prior races, every race over the last few years has had at least 1 driver starting in the top 5. And again, that lends itself to the fact that whoever gets that jump, whoever gets out early and leads those early laps is probably going to be in the nuts. They're just going to lead so many of these stage 1 laps that they're going to be tough to beat. So we'll get into some of the drivers that may be affected by that, and some of the ones that we're going to be looking at. But generally, this is a low wreckage kind of race. We don't get a ton of wrecks in this one. I think last night and with the trucks and the Xfinity, maybe not as typical as we've seen in the cups. So I don't expect a ton of cautions, or at least green flag cautions for wrecks. So we should see a fairly clean race. That's what we're expecting. And again, we're going to need those Doms, and we're going to need some of these cheap guys, because some of these Doms that look pretty good are expensive. So we'll see how we're going to build it as we go.
Yeah, you're not kidding about the price of some of these DOMs, but we also have a bunch of guys in the mid range too who, if they did end up leading laps, like what we saw Chase Briscoe in the last spring race here at Martinsville, what was it, 139 laps led or something, or 138? You have a potential for someone like that to come in and, lead 100 plus laps. And if so, you need them. And this isn't a PD course at all. It's really hard to pass. Some of these guys who are in the back of the pack right now could easily be lapped, inside the first stage and then have a hole to dig out of the entire race. And, you just really want to maximize the upside. That's the most important part. I faded Ekis on Friday. I couldn't dig myself out of that hole because I missed the one dominator that you really had to have, right? Majeski ended up dominating a lot, but once you miss one, it's really tough to kind of even just give yourself a chance to at least not only crush, but also just cash in general. Because, we can go on and about, oh yeah, this guy will have the best PD, but it ain't the move, right? It ain't the move. We want guys starting in the top 10. We want guys who have the ability to come out and win this race. And no better way to start out than the stud range stats, right? We got a bunch of guys here. So let me go ahead and get our filter here on SaberSim. So we are going to do greater than. Let's do 10K today. So we'll have the 10K range and up. Here are the 5 drivers that we got. We got Denny Hamlin, had the winner of last week. What was it? 2 of the last 3 races he's won. We also have Martin Truex Jr., who was the late stage dominator, almost the late race dominator the entire race last week. Should have won last week, but he is starting 4th. He is going to be very popular. You also have Ryan Blaney, who, fun fact, out of active drivers, this is just a mere fun fact. I don't really love him, but out of active drivers, Ryan Blaney has the best average finish at Martinsville. Yeah, 9.5 apparently. You get that from Wikipedia. It's nice. You also have the PD of Christopher Bell, and then you also have Kyle Larson, the pole sitter here, who had a very impressive display in practice, and also has a teammate right behind him, and also Bubba Wallace to his to his quarter panel. So this should be a really interesting range. Who are your ones that you're really targeting here, Stats?
Yeah, I mean, you talk about practice. The A group was better in practice overall, yet you've got Hamlin and Larson, the 2 favorites here, were in the B group and performed really well in practice. So that's something to note. Listen, we talked about getting out front here, leading those early stages. The favorite to do that's going to be Larson. He's starting on the pole. He's got Bubba Wallace next to him. So as you mentioned, I don't think there's any bad blood from last week. It was just some bad luck there. But Larson finished really well. Larson was involved in that wreck and wound up finishing with just 2 laps to go, winds up coming 3rd. I think he was 5th or 6th when the wreck happens, winds up finishing 3rd. Larson, probably the best car. I would say it's kind of 1A, 1B with Larson and Hamlin this week. And I think that's the way the betting markets are. They're really close as the co-favorites. But we're looking the most likely scenario here is Larson gets out to the lead and dominates a bunch of laps. So that's where most people are looking. If you want to go ahead and maybe get off of Larson, you think maybe a Bubba Wallace jumps out early or something like that. Could be a strong GPP play, but expect Larson to maybe be the highest owned guy because of the fact that if he gets out in front here at Martinsville, he is going to lead a ton of laps, and then is going to be really tough to not make the winning lineup, right? So Truex, all of these guys in this range are going to be owned. Typically at Martinsville, you are going to need the top drivers. This is one of those tracks where the chalk is often very good. So these guys are all going to be, I think, 20% owned. I think Larson, we're looking at the 40+%, and we're looking between 20 and 30% on the rest of them. Truex, strong play. I think Big T actually is high on Truex. If I looked at it earlier, I think Big T's got a core with Truex. He's had success, short track guy. You saw what he did last week, short track. His track history, he's got some wins here. I think he's won 3 times here at this track. So a lot of success at Martinsville. Blaney and Bell. We've got both guys I project somewhere around the 25% range. They're going to be starting, Bell, you're looking at that more of a PD type of play where he starts 20th. And certainly as a guy who could finish in the top 5, who's going, if he does that from the 20th position, even without the lead laps, he's going to be in the nuts for you. Blaney, a little trickier, starting 9th, probably going to have to get him out front. Now, the thing with Blaney, I think you mentioned that he has a win here, and last year he got out in front. He did not have the best car, so that can happen here as well. He did not have the best car last year, got out front, and then led a whole bunch of laps. So we'll see. I don't know if he's necessarily my favorite play starting ninth here. I don't know, within a Ford. I don't know how the Fords are going to be. And so I don't love Blaney. He's not going to be one of my favorite plays. Just don't like the start position. And I think maybe his recent success here, and now he does have some recent success at short flat tracks, and certainly the win here last year. I think he may be just a little bit overplayed for where he's starting for me.
Yes, very much so. I'm not really huge on Ryan Blaney here much inside the top 10 because I do think the three above him are so much better. I think like Truex especially, but Larson's the one where the first 80 laps should be his, right? That's the most likely scenario. I like the word that you use there, the most likely. Larson also had very good practice times just overall on the long, 30 lap splits, right? That's the most important part. It doesn't matter about, what did you do on one lap? No, what did you do over the 30 lap run? And Stewart-Haas Racing, was very impressive. And Larson, Elliott, Bowman, those guys did a great job. And Larson's going to be the one who's helming that. We've already seen him dominate, a couple times this year. You've seen Hamlin do it. You've seen Truex do it. Those are three guys that I know can do it. Blaney, despite, that fun little fact I gave about how he has the best average finish here, but he's not really that great here. I know that he's had some good success. But I think he won recently, but it's not a track that you just fully expect Ryan Blaney to he's going to crush here, right? This isn't the track that I expected out of him. But when you look at, a guy like, let's just say Christopher Bell, just comparing, him directly to Ryan Blaney, I feel like the odds they, lead in the first stage are both the same. I just feel like it's not much at all. I would say almost zero. And if Christopher Bell is, kind of offering 11 spots better at PD, maybe he makes some ground up, all of a sudden they're side by side going into stage two. Like, oh man, no doubt you'd want Christopher Bell in that range, right? He's 300 less. You get a little bit more PD. It feels like it's a very similar type of play despite the 11 starting spots back there. That's why I definitely prefer Bell. But really, I almost made a rule here, Stats. I want at least one of Larson, Truex, Hamlin. I know that we're going to get into some rules later on, but I don't mind, having at least two of the top 10, maybe even three. But I really want one of these three guys here in Hamlin, Larson, and Truex. It'll probably be Larson I have the most of. It'll probably be Truex very closely behind, and then Hamlin just because of price. I feel like that extra 700 matters just a little bit more this week. I look at the bottom of the range, right? I don't want to cap my upside as much as I like a guy like Harrison Burton a little bit later on. Well, Harrison Burton's upside could be 29th or 28th. That's just not good enough to win a tournament, right? So that extra 700 can very much come into play. And then after that, it would be Christopher Bell. And then honestly, Blaney could be an odd man out here. So that would be very interesting watch. Let's go down to the 9K range. We got 4 drivers here. You know what? Let's include Chase Elliott here. I want to include Chase Elliott here because starting in the top 5, I keep swearing him off. Last week, Big T was on him. He took your place. He said, hey, we got to play Chase Elliott. He filled the role perfectly. And now he was like, Chase Elliott, we got to play him here. Starting third, I already said how Hendrick Motorsports, we also had the comment from VG3 earlier about this is the 40th anniversary for Hendrick. I think this is the 40th anniversary from their first win, if I recall, from the Discord chat that we had earlier today that was posted in there. It's interesting. I'm not going to completely, go against Chase Elliott. I just, I have morals and I have to stick to the guns that I committed to earlier. But also in this range, you get another, William Byron, another racer who definitely has the upside to maybe get there late on. Starting a little bit further back, it's a very similar play to Christopher Bell. If I like Christopher Bell, I'll like Byron, but I'm not really that high on either of them. So I do want to temper my expectations, but they're both fine. But you just got to recognize that it's going to be the third stage where if you're getting any dominator points at all, that's where it's going to be coming from those two. But I also really want your take on Joey Logano. I'm a big Logano guy here, Stats, and I really wanted to see if you endorse that or if maybe if I should caution that a little bit here. What do you think?
No, I do endorse it. I mean, Logano, I'll get it right at some point, but look at his recent history at these short flat tracks. It's just been really, really good and great track history here. I think you have to like him in this spot. I think, the fact that he's his starting position is 6 is going to tamper down the ownership on him. But I could see him leading a bunch of laps here and potentially being in the winning lineup. So I like Logano at the track. It's just tricky starting in the 6th spot. When you look at the other guys in this range, I mean, Byron to me is really close to Bell and may even have a better car than Bell does. So you're getting a savings on him, but you're losing maybe just a couple of spots in the starting position. But I kind of like Bell for the save. I mean Byron over Bell for the savings. So I'm going to have probably just a little bit more on Byron there. The two guys, Keselowski and Gibbs, I just don't like at all. Keselowski especially, do not like. I'm not a big fan of Gibbs here either. I think guys with experience tend to do better here. Gibbs has been a little bit disappointing. I think he'll struggle today. Not as much experience as some of these other guys. Not a track that I expect him to do well in. Now, Chase Elliott, different story. If we're going to dip down to that 8,800 level with Chase, listen, he's been great in Martinsville. So starting way up there, starts 3rd. That'll kind of put a ceiling on his ownership. We've got him. What do we got? 23% projected on the ownership. I'm not going to be shocked if Chase can get out starting in the 3rd position. If Chase gets out there and could lead a bunch of laps in this race, I think all these guys up at the top are in play to lead a bunch of laps here in the early stages. And if you want to take an alternative view and maybe get off of a Larson and move, you want to play Hamlin and you don't want to play Larson and Hamlin together, you can make the case where Elliott maybe gets out early and leads a bunch of laps here, and it's not Larson.
Yeah, very much so. Elliott, obviously, being in the same team, I definitely like HMS today, right? If I liked Larson, I gotta at least entertain Chase Elliott, especially, for far cheaper, right? Starting in the top 5, having that similar upside profile to where, look, if he got his mojo back here at Martinsville, that would be a great thing. And obviously, we have 400 laps, so we get plenty of Dom points potentials here. Timothy Lee. Now, these projections are DK. They are a little bit inflated, though. I will say that is something that I was trying to get the exact mindset of coming into this race. They are slightly inflated. They're not the exact. I think there's like 880 points or something like that this week possible with finishing positions and Dom points. But I was wanting to really kind of focus in on which drivers had this upside, right? I feel like if I underprojected Bubba Wallace to where like no one was getting him, right? Because at the end of the day, it was tough because when I originally had Bubba Wallace projected, it was just no way I was getting any of him. Same with a guy like Chase Elliott, where I wanted to kind of showcase their upside in these projections. Where, look, if I ran the optimizer now, like it would give me some Chase Elliott, give me some Bubba without having to completely force it because them starting in the top 5. Their median outcome, albeit probably around 10th or 15th for Bubba in his scenario, is much lower than their upside could depict for tournaments and stuff too. But really, like you hit the hammer on the nail there, Stats, when you were talking about it. Like Elliott's fine. Logano, though, I had a fun fact. Another fun fact. We're full of them today. Logano in his last 9 races. I know that it's not all the the next gen car and stuff, but he has 9 straight top 10s. Over half of those are top 5s. And also, I think it's a pair of runner-ups. So, if you get anything out of that, Joey Logano is due here at Martinsville for a win. And he's a guy that, we keep saying it. I always sound like a broken record whenever I talk about this. But, I love HMS this week. But if I wanted to get off HMS, if I wanted to even get off, Truex potentially, Logano is the next man up. I think Logano is one of my favorite plays in the 9K range, if not my favorite. I think he's just my favorite in general. I really think the upside is there. I think that, he looked good last week. Raced it, held it up there in the top 3 almost the entire time, the 3rd stage especially. I think the upside's there, and I think Logano can get the job done. He'll be my play of the day later on. I'll just be honest. I'm going to bend the rules for me here, Stats. I'm going to make sure it's under 25% for our play of the day, and because Logano can fit that bill. But then after Logano, I don't have interest in Keselowski, but I do have interest in Ty Gibbs. I think Gibbs is, very solid here. I just think that, we had Jake Swells in the chat mention track profile as well for Gibbs. It is this flat kind of circuit where, in theory, it should be good for Gibbs. The odds don't necessarily agree and stuff, but I do want to trust the eye test here. 18-1 is still just fine. 9K. I like Gibbs quite a bit here. And then Elliott would be that next man up. And then Byron. Like I said, I want the upside to lead laps. Gibbs, if you maybe choose straight up, it would be Byron over Gibbs. But that 800 in savings definitely matters a little bit. But you want the dominators. You want the potential to lead 100-plus laps. And you made the mention of it earlier. I think each of these races in the next-gen car, at least 2 cars have, led over 100 laps in each race or something like that. It is very, very important to get that today. So that's why these guys starting in the teens and 20s are a little bit cautious in that end. Stats, let's move on to the 7,700 through the 8,600. So I'm being a little bit arbitrary with the way I'm doing them. I'm not doing the filter this time. But we get a guy like Chris Buescher, who is the best PD play on the slate, which good or bad, right? I think he's definitely the best PD play on the slate. Tyler Reddick, Ross Chastain, Kyle Busch, and then another HMS guy that I keep swearing off, but looked good in practice, Alex Bowman. And then lastly, Bubba Wallace sitting next to pole sitter Kyle Larson. So what do you think about this range here, Stats?
This is, for the most part, this is a pretty crappy range, I think. Buescher, listen, you're going to lock him in cash games for the place differential. He should be the obvious cash play on the day. I mean, I could see, listen, he's going to be high owned. I've got a bunch of them. But I could see the scenario where he basically sits between 15th and 20th and doesn't really do a lot for you in a GPP. So if you want to go a different route, a lot of people are going to be on that, taking those high price guys up at the top, and kind of, you could fit Buescher in there if you go a little bit lower on the bottom. There's some options there down low. So if you want to get different, maybe you get off of a Buescher and just hope that he doesn't get anywhere near the top 10. And then that could be a potential way that you could get some leverage on the field. As far as Reddick, just not a fan of Reddick here. He's not a flat short track type of racer that I'm interested in. Chastain, I don't think he sees anywhere near the top 10. Kyle Busch has just been a disaster in recent times, and he's been bitching about NASCAR right now. I think we'll see Kyle Busch moving backwards all day. I mean, Bowman, pretty much similar here. I had a good season, but not on the on these short tracks. So don't really love Bowman. Now, Bubba Wallace is where it gets interesting. Talked about him earlier. Not going to be high owned because he's starting second. It's not the most envious position because he's next to Larson. He doesn't have the favorable, he doesn't have the favorable position on the track. And of course, Larson starts with his teammate behind him. So that's going to be a help as well. But I love for GPPs to sprinkle in some Bubba here. You're going to get some decent leverage on the field. And like I said, you don't have to be the best car. Now, I think Bubba's got more short speed than he does long, but we're banking. If you're taking Bubba, you're really banking on the fact that he gets out front early. And as I mentioned before, like last year, Blaney got out, didn't necessarily have the best car, got out into the lead, and they couldn't catch him. Right. So Bubba could do that here for stage one. If he's got the best car on the short run and gets out to the lead, if he can manage to do that off the jump, at 7,700, he could lead a bunch of laps and be really, really good for you. So I like Bubba as a way if you want to get off of some of the chalkier picks who are up at the top of the start.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. And I like the word that you use there, short run, right? If you can get out front, it's hard to pass here. We know that. We know it's a pain in the ass to try and get by cars here at this track. If Bubba gets out to, gets the better jump, right? Like that could easily be the scenario here where all of a sudden Bubba's optimal and, a 10th place finish doesn't phase him because he's under 8K. He's under 8K. If he led 80 laps, hell, he could get 15th and he'd probably have a chance to still be optimal. But it is very interesting to see how people handle Bubba Wallace here. I think he's going to be a little bit chalky today here at 24%. How many guys in the top 10 is too many for a single entry here, Stats? This is a good question. I think the answer is 4 is too many. 3
4
is
too many. Yeah. When I look back at the history, I think you're going to want at least 2, and 3 hits quite often as well. So 4 is a little bit too much, but 2 to 3, I think, is the sweet spot.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think you want at least 2 and at most 3. And I think that's the way to approach this slate here. That's a good question there. We also are very, very aligned on this. I think Bowman's the one I'll just kind of make the case for just because he is a winner here in the past, right? It's not the next gen car, so I don't want to completely just go overboard. But at the same time, it is a fast team. It is under 8K. He got his swagger back a little bit on the road course. I'm okay with it. It's not something I'm going to go out of my way for. But all of a sudden, if Alex Bowman was sixth in this race, had a dozen fastest laps or something like that, it's a slim chance that I wouldn't even say it's slim. There's a chance that he's optimal in that scenario at under 8K. It's the price that intrigues me more. But guys like Reddick, Chastain, and Busch, I have zero issue Xing them out. I don't really have a need to go any of those guys. You're exactly right though about like one. Busch hasn't done anything lately, but Chastain, obviously had the wall ride here and stuff. That's great. He did a wall ride. What was it to finish? Outside the top 10, outside the top 5 even. So he's not really that great here. He has the one great moment, which I'd love to see. But and Reddick's the same way. Reddick's a little bit overpriced. Buescher is the one though where I am debating heavily. I don't want to cap my upside. I think if you already have 3 drivers inside the top 10, Buescher is a great play. If you don't already have that and you're, playing guys in the teens, playing guys in the low 20s or whatever, I don't know if I'd go Buescher in that scenario. I think that you still want to give yourself that upside, and he's going to provide a great floor. But at the end of the day, if someone does, if 2 guys have 100 and you don't have them, right? Like you want to at least maximize that. The good thing is, though, at 8,600, I think you can get away with it. I think I'm committing to going a little bit overweight on him here. Stats is something that I've been debating all day, but I do think going overweight on him is a good thing, as long as that you have those guys in the top 10, to make it. I think having 3 guys in the top 10 with Buescher is going to be a popular path today, but I think it's a really good path overall. Let's move down to the Stewart-Haas Racing Special. So this is Chase Briscoe, Josh Berry, Ryan Preece, and Noah Gragson, all priced in a line here. That was incredible by DraftKings just to go ahead and shove them all together. And we have 2 of them starting in the top 10, and we have 2 of them starting in the 20s. This is a very interesting group, and I'm also going to throw in Daniel Suarez and Austin Dillon in this range. And just for good measure, we'll just keep those 6. This is a fun range. I think that Josh Berry kind of proved me wrong a little bit last week. I said that what has he done to, really merit being heavy chalk and stuff, and then he went up and drove the car to the front and, really made a fool out of me there. But then it was also Chase Briscoe, who looked very, very good last week as well, and also has good course history here as well, too. And then Ryan Preece. This is his type of track, right? This is what Ryan Preece should thrive on. A short, flat track. This is the track that we'd expect Ryan Preece to get a top 15. And obviously Gragson, who I know you're very high on as well. So go ahead and go through Stewart-Haas Racing and then touch up on Suarez and Dillon a little bit later on. Here are your stats.
Yeah, so SHR, I mean, they've probably benefited more than anyone here in the next gen. So I expect some good things from this team in this race. So when you start off, we look at the top of this range. It's Briscoe and Berry. They're starting 5th and 7th. I think you've got to give the edge to Briscoe here. I think Briscoe has a shot. Again, one of these top 5 cars to get out into the lead and get you a lot of down point. Now at 7,500, I expect the cars to be good. I think he's a really good GPP play and potential for down points. So he's a guy that I'm going to have a decent bit of, more so than Berry. I just think Berry's starting at 7, and Berry's been impressive, no doubt about it. I just think the starting position, and I think Briscoe, his teammate, just being a bit better than he is. You're not the savings there. It's $100. It's just not enough for me to get too heavy, on Berry. So I like Briscoe a lot more there. Preece, like you said, short tracks, flat tracks. That's Ryan Preece just eats that up, right? So starting 22nd, I like him here as well. I think a really strong GPP play. I just expect this team to run well. But my favorite play of all of them is going to be Gragson, starting at 26th. I just think this car, the car was elite in Martinsville with Amarola last year, right, in Martinsville. And I think Gragson's got a real good shot to have a strong finish at 7,100. He's my favorite driver of the Stewart-Haas Racing team. I think that place differential is going to be key. I love the price at 7,100. Allows us to do some other things here. So yeah, he's going to be one of my core players, Gragson. I just think I like that price for the place differential and the upside that we get. If we're going down Suarez and Dylan, or
yeah,
both of those
let's
guys.
throw those two into the mix here. I do think it was important to group up Stewart-Haas race, but
Yeah.
we can add those two in as well.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Suarez is cheap, but the Chevys, I'm not anticipating a whole lot here. I don't like Suarez much starting 21st. I just think we've got better options. I mean, starting 22nd for $300 more. I think that's the way you're going to want to go before you get on Suarez. And then Dylan, not a bad starting position, 28th. But listen, RCR has been slow. And again, I just don't think that we get a strong enough finish from Dylan. So that's another guy that I'm looking to either fade or just be very much underweight on Austin Dillon. So I don't like those last two guys much at all.
Yeah, and Austin Dillon's going to be a little bit popular as well, just because once you hit the under 7K range, right? Once you get below Stewart-Haas Racing, the plays kind of drop off. I think that Gragson is the last confident play of like, this guy is going to do well. I think I'm confident that he's going to produce fantasy points. Then once you get below him, I'm not to skip ahead or anything like that. No one projects in the 30s, and these projections have been very kind to points this week when I'm trying to maximize the upside. And really, it's not fun, right? Like once you get below Gragson, you're going to have difficulty building, and that's why it's important to nail this range, especially what Jake says, right? Like got to hit this range to ship. Absolutely. When you look at it here too, Chase Briscoe, what is he? 12-1 to win this race. That is incredible for a guy starting 7,500, starting fifth. The problem is, like, last week he had a great drive, drove it to 18th. Like, I don't know. Does this car have the ability to stay in the top 5? I think the answer is probably yes. I mean, we've seen him in the past here at Martinsville. He had got 5th here last year in the spring race, 4th here in the fall race, right? You also just have to look at, the larger picture. 4 straight top 10s here for Chase Briscoe. The car is good enough here that also the talent is good enough. That's the most important part. I do believe in Briscoe. I'm very high on him this week. That's something that I'm going to be buying on. Barry, similar way, but I think you're right. You mentioned it. I prefer Briscoe over Barry. Absolutely prefer Briscoe over Barry. Briscoe has a track record. Barry, he's good on short tracks. He's good on these type of tracks. However, I do want to go with the guy who's done it before. But that's not to say that Barry's a bad play. I just think Briscoe's a little bit of a head and shoulders above him in that sense. You like Gragson a lot. I like Gragson too. I do think Priest, I'm going to trust a little bit more this week. All right. This is the week, though. I say it every week. There's always one driver. If Priest sucks this week, I'm done with it. I'm done with him. If Priest sucks this week on a short, flat track where he's starting 22nd, if he gets beat out by Gragson even, I'm done with it. And the answer to that is just like, this is his style. This is what, when you expected, Ryan Priest to do well, you look at Martinsville and you're like, that's the track that I expect him to do well. I mean, this is why we played him in the Clash too. Like, to start the season, Ryan Priest does well in flat, short tracks. He better do it this week. Starting 22nd, top 15 potential is something that I'm going to be trusting here heavily. The practice times weren't that bad or anything like that. It just comes down to, can he get it done? And, we go ahead and just look at his previous finishes here at Martinsville. Just last year, it was 15th and it was 20th, right? If we get a 15th here, I think it's good enough. Gragson, you can throw him in the same boat, but the 4 PD points there matter a ton too. And I don't want to completely dismiss that. And then once we get below Gragson, good night. You said it about Suarez. I don't got any interest in Suarez starting 21st. I'd rather have Priest or Gragson much more. Austin Dillon, though, just by virtue of elimination, he comes into play. I hate it, but he's someone that he's going to project fine. He's a little bit pricey at 6,800, but starting 28th, can't really go that far backward. It's someone that, I don't feel great about it, but he's going to make the teams at the end of the day. He's going to be a fine last piece. If you're like sitting there struggling, you can't get up to Stewart-Haas Racing, it's okay to go Austin Dillon, right? You got a 12th here in the spring race last year. You got a 23rd. You got a 3rd here in Martinsville 2 years ago in the spring race, right? There's a case to be made for him, but it's not something that I'm just going to go out of my way to do here. Stats, and I think that you talked about that too, where it's tough. But then when you go lower, it's even tougher. Below Austin Dillon, you get Eric Jones, John Hunter Nemechek, Austin Cindric, Michael McDowell, Todd Gilliland, and Ricky Stenhouse. So just for spoilers, right? Tony likes Cindric a little bit. He also likes Gilliland. I get why. They were kind of fast in practice and stuff, but I also don't get why. I almost get uneasy clicking those guys in the starting in the teens nonetheless. But then I see a guy like Michael McDowell. Good on paper. I want Michael McDowell. He's not terrible at Martinsville. But that car is a tractor right now, too. I want him to get 25th. 25th, is, I believe it's 27 fantasy points. That's good enough. 28 even. That's very fine. That could even be optimal this week. But really, this is where the range just drops down at stats. Who from this range, below Austin Dillon, all the way down to Ricky Stenhouse, are you the most interested in here this week?
The obvious choice is McDowell. I mean, he's the big place differential guy here. Starts 35th. But, yeah, it's kind of been up and down. I mean, you just don't know. Like, I've been high on him a couple of times here and let us down. But started 35th. He's got the biggest upside. I mean, he could give you a really strong performance. Or, again, he could be way back, 2-3 laps down and not really a factor and finish outside the top 30. So, but of all these guys, I think that's the obvious guy in this range. The other guys, I'm not nearly as high on. McDowell's going to be pretty high owned. The other guys will not be. So these are going to be some of the lower owned guys on the slate for a reason. I mean, Big T likes Cindric and Gill. It's probably the fact that, it's Ford, Cindric, and the Penske. We know they're good here. It's just the starting positions. I mean, where do you expect Cindric to finish? That's my question. Like, if he finishes 10th, is that good enough? Like, starting 14th, I don't know. I mean, is he going to finish top 7, 8? I think that's where he's going to probably have to be in order to get in your winning lineups, and Gilliland not too far behind that. I just don't see it. So I'm good with a total fade of both of those guys. Really, I'm okay fading everyone in this range outside of McDowell. I think he's the only guy that you must have if you're in 150, making 150 lineups here. He obviously has to be in that consideration because of the upside. But the other guys, I'm perfectly fine just hitting the X button on them.
I'm almost with you. And here's the case to be made for them, right? Because I think I kind of got the hint from him when I talked to him. He said, how many guys are going to get lapped in the back of the pack? It dampens how far back Gilliland and Cindric can go in that first stage, right? The chances are Gilliland and Cindric aren't going to get lapped in that first stage, but maybe 10 cars could, maybe even more than that, right? So it dampens how far maybe they can go backward. And that's the case to be made for them. But even then, I wouldn't say that 18th is good enough for Cindric. I don't think that's not optimal at all. That's not even close to optimal. And the same thing can be said about Gilliland. And I also like the comment from Izzy B too. If you like Gilliland, you should love McDowell. Teammates, yes, absolutely. I don't mind it. The problem is with McDowell, he gets lap stage 1, right? If we didn't get an early caution, he didn't gain any spots or anything like that. He's sitting like 31st. He's already a lap down. Is his upside 25th? And I think the answer is probably yes, which could be good enough at 6,300. It's still a little bit of a debate to be had here, though. Like, there's no comfortable play down here. I think that's the good thing about it. McDowell is the only play that I feel comfortable clicking. Even a guy like Eric Jones, I don't feel comfortable with. And I know that he was doing really good last week too. But McDowell is the only one here. I think Stenhouse can also be made a little bit of a shout here, just because I think that 6K starting 23rd is a little bit of a PD. If he held position, at 6K, I think that's optimal. I think it's very close to optimal, depending on. I think that's a better chance of being optimal, I guess I should say, because what he allows you to do too is he allows you to jam in these studs. Because I think if you're trying to jam in multiple 10K plus guys, you're going to be stuck in this range here. Maybe even 1 or 2 guys needed. And that's where, what does the build allow you to do? What does clicking Stenhouse allow you to do? If it allows you to do things that you want, absolutely do it. If you're like, oh man, I'm just going to plug Stenhouse as one of my first guys in, I'd caution on that. But I think that's the way to approach it here. Stats, let's dive below 6K now here too. Let's do the top half of this the 5K range. So I want to do Haley, Zane Smith, LaJoie, and Hocevar. And then we'll do the bottom half here afterwards. But really, LaJoie is going to be the guy who gets a little bit of ownership here. Really, what was the fastest time in practice overall for over a single lap? His 30-lap splits weren't terrible or anything like that. It's interesting. I think LaJoie is fine under 6K. And we also get Big T in the chat here too. McDowell is the worst play of the day in his school bus. All right. He's going to run 32nd all day. Tony, if I told you 25th for McDowell is optimal, I think you would take it. I think you would take 28 fantasy points from Michael McDowell. I think you would. And you're sitting here playing Cindric and Gilliland. You want to preach to us about McDowell being the worst play? That's disgusting, Big T. But, I can't hate. He is on a heater.
Do not fade Big T. Do not fade Big T right now.
Do not fade Big T right now, especially after winning all the money over the last 2 weeks. And knock on wood, hopefully golf too. But really, a good run of form he's in. And I can tell you from his player pool, might have slightly different thinking than stats not here. But really, the under 6K all the way down to 5.6 is or to 5.5 with Justin Haley. LaJoie is the one to probably target the most, then Hocevar, and then would you do Smith and Haley? Would you do that order as well, their stats?
Yeah, that's probably the order. I don't know if that's still the case. Like Hocevar has the best odds of this group.
Yes.
I believe, right? So, you got to keep that in mind. I know a lot of people, I think more people are going to be on LaJoie, 7, better place differential, 7 spots, but, just kind of keep that in mind with Hocevar. Smith and Haley, I just don't have much interest in at all. I mean, you mentioned LaJoie with with that practice time. I mean, you don't want to get too excited about it, but it does, it does have to be in the back of your mind. I think that's where a lot of people are going to be looking, because we're going to have to get cheap. Again, we've talked about it. There's a lot of expensive guys that are pretty tasty on this slate, which means we've got to get some cheapies in there as well. So of this group, I think if you want to go to Hocevar and kind of get off of LaJoie, I think you'll get a little bit of leverage. He'll be slightly less on. What do we have him on here? I'm just looking at your screen. Yeah, we've got. Is that the ownership?
15%,
yeah, 15-9. So I think if you want to get with the slightly less owned guy, Hocevar is fine to taking that spot, and I would kind of leave out Smith and Haley. Don't like either one of those guys. They should be getting lapped and be back in the 30 somewhere when this is all said and done.
Yeah, LaJoie and Hocevar, both teammates here. If you like one, you probably want to like the other two. I actually don't mind stacking them up. For these cheap guys, right? I don't mind stacking up a team like here back. Like, let's say all of a sudden the team overperforms here and stuff. LaJoie and Hocevar kind of hit that a little bit, right? Where, oh man, look at Spire Motorsports having a great day. Two top 20s. You just fluke into that. Because you obviously, it depends a lot on the driver, a lot on the car too. But if the car does better than expected, could absolutely bank that. Zane Smith is having a decent run of form. I know that he surprised me. I think it was the road course where he surprised me at. But really, it's good to see a guy like Zane Smith kind of rounding into form a little bit. I know he got 35th last week, but it was 20th in the road course. It's not the worst thing. I'm going to continue to be bullish on Zane Smith, despite running 24th here to start out. He is someone that I'll probably have a little bit of, just a sprinkle. But really, it's LaJoie, Hocevar, and then, honestly, Haley's a fade, and then Zane Smith maybe just a sprinkle at best. Big T is saying, when I ship with the unique, you guys are going to laugh about it. Well, we'll be laughing with you. I know that you're probably going to be watching the Iowa-South Carolina game later on today anyway there, Big T. You're not going to be watching the NASCAR race. You're going to have Caitlin Clark on your television. We're going to go down to the 5,400 and below range to cap off this slate. And I'm going to get about Harrison Burton here. I don't love it stats, but when I'm like digging in this dumpster, this is what I pulled up about Harrison Burton, and his times in the 30-lap run were actually pretty solid. Starting 34th, can he get a top 25? I think the answer is yes. And the reason being, I put it into the playbook here. 2 top 15s in the last 2 years here. I know a lot of that might depend on starting position and stuff, but you would take that at 5,400 all day. The practice times were very solid. And honestly, with the practice times, with the others in this range, he stands head and shoulders above anyone else. And he's also 500 to 1. And that sounds stupid. But everyone else around him, Zane Smith, Justin Haley, Kaz Gralla, Daniel Hemrick, Josh Williams, and David Starr, all 1,000 to 1. So Burton is clearly getting a slight amount of respect. This is from DraftKings Sportsbook. So I think, Harrison Burton is probably the one to have in this range. And I do think he can drive this and pick up a few spots. And then I look at the other drivers and I get turned off. I think Daniel Hemrick is the only other one that I'd have interest in this range. But I do think the case can be made for Harrison Burton today, and I do think that he is one of the sneakier plays below 6K overall.
Yeah, I think you pretty much nailed it. I mean, you look at his success at the short flat tracks; it hasn't been very good, except here at Martinsville. So he's had his two best finishes in all of these short flat tracks have been at this track. So you've got to, at this price, you're hoping, at 5,400, you're just praying to get something decent to pair with some of these expensive guys. So I don't mind Burton at all. And I agree with you. I mean, if you absolutely felt like you had to, you want to take a little bit of a crazy lineup, Hemrick would be the only other choice that I think I'd feel comfortable clicking on. The other guys just no way. And I'm not too crazy about doing a Hemrick lineup either. But he's the only other guy I could possibly click. I think Growler, Williams, Starr are just you're going to just want to leave those guys out.
Yeah, I'm with you there too. And Izzy B saying home track for the Burton family is very, very interesting. I do like that little bit of narrative there. I apologize for not getting us to the hour mark. I am currently going to be living in Louisville, which is an hour away from where I usually live, for the next month. And I don't have my computer set up just yet. So I wasn't able to kind of drag along the show, but I will be able to drag it along for about a few more minutes here because we got some other things to get to. We got your bets to get to as well. And we also have been firing bets literally all week, all month, and all year. And we also have the national championship for the men's basketball tournament tomorrow. We also have it for the women's tournament today at 3:00. And Tony has hit his last 2 Iowa live moneyline bets or Iowa spread bets. So we'll see if he follows suit on a third one. But a ton of bets going on. It's not just NASCAR. It's not just, NBA or anything like that. Literally covering every sport. I know that baseball, we have already seen a lot of picks thrown in there today. But stats, what are the drivers that you are targeting here this week for Martinsville to win this race?
I think it's going to be pretty chalky. All right. So I like one of these chalk guys between Hamlin and Larson more than the other. I'll give that one out in the Discord. I'm going to give you guys the long shot that I think has the best chance of coming in. So I'll give you Briscoe. You could get him at plus 1,600 over at BetMGM. I like that as a long shot play if you want to get off of the chalkier options that are out there this week.
Yeah, I like it. Chase Briscoe starting 5th, really ran good here in the spring race last year. Absolutely has potential and does really well at Martinsville. So I really like that one there. And if you want the other one, which one he's choosing up top, maybe one of those chalkier options, code RPS15. 15% off your first payment here at Run Pure Sports. It's not just one sport, it's not just NASCAR, anything like that. If you guys are interested in all sports, we got it covered from top to bottom. I know Bruce won the UFL Showdown contest last week to start it out. He's also pumping in UFL content. We have Jaime, who just, we just had a soccer winner into the chat here for about 2K and also another one. So, and obviously the baseball, golf, everything else doesn't really need to be explained. But if you guys want those niche sports, we have it covered from top to bottom. Stats, let's go ahead and get it to our drivers of the day. So we are going to make the rule. And I already kind of gave mine out earlier, but under 25%. So basically, I'm not letting us pick Buescher, Larson, Hamlin, Truex, or Briscoe. I'll let you pick anyone else outside of those 5. But who is your driver of the day?
It's really hard, right? Because the guys who are going to be owned, I think a cash lineup with maybe one tweak in there is going to look really good in GPPs as well. But I'll say the guy that I think has the best shot to shake things up is going to be Bubba Wallace at the 7,700. So I'm going to take a chance here. I love him in GPPs. Take Bubba Wallace, maybe disrupts things right out of the get-go and gets us a bunch of those lead laps that we need and doms it for us.
I love it. Bubba Wallace starting second, 7,700. If you were to get ahead of Larson, it would be a very interesting slate. And here's a question for you, because I know a lot of people might hear that and be like, well, with Bubba Wallace starting second, would you play Kyle Larson with him?
You could. Yeah, you could. I mean, I've seen it multiple times at this track, where you get two guys from the top five. I've seen first and second starting positions also hit the nuts. And at that price of 7,700, it adds to it. He doesn't have to lead maybe as many laps. One of the advantages you get with Larson, obviously, he's starting one, plus maybe the best pit crew right now. So I think that is going to help him stay on some lead laps. But if we could get, Bubba Wallace, you can see the scenario. Bubba gets out there early, leads a bunch of laps. Larson beats him in the pits and then doesn't look back. So you get a scenario like that, it's easily the 1 and 2 starting positions make it into the nuts.
Love it. Love it. Joe Ruff, also F1. I forgot that we had a bunch of printers last night in F1. The Japan Grand Prix raced at 1 a.m. We also had red flags. So the race didn't really start until about 1:35 a.m., but we stayed up for some winners. And it's great to have, again, code RPS15, 15% off your first payment. I'm going to go with someone who probably won't be in my main team. I'm really debating it, but I'm going to be very overweight on Joey Logano. 9 straight top 10s here. A couple runner-ups. 5 of those 9 have been in the top 5. You're due, Joey Logano. You're absolutely due. And I think that last week's run was very promising. And I do think that I can stock that from last week and think, you know what? He has the ability, not only the ability, we all know he has the ability, but he also has the car now to stick it up front, and potentially lead 100-plus laps. Love Logano here. We got Logano and Bubba Wallace, our lesser-owned drivers of the day. Again, code RPS15, 15% off your first payment here at Run for Your Sports. Greatly appreciate y'all watching us. Good luck today, and good luck from stats as well. If we don't win, if Big T doesn't steal the money again, because, Big T is winning everything. He is the nuts in golf, apparently. If Big T wins, what we're going to have to do, we're going to have to give away his money at that point. He's going to have too much of it, but it should be a fun time here tonight, or today, I guess. And good luck here at Martinsville, everyone. Bye-bye.